Hello, hello, hello. Crafty Chris here with another Scrap Your Scraps Thursday night. Tonight we are going to use up our scrap jelly printing, and I think there might be other things in here too, but anything it can be plain paper or it can be pattern paper, jelly printing, stamping, whatever. And we're going to make little tiny color block artworks using our embossing folders and some paste and some whatnot. I will make sure to write a list of the things you need so that you can pull them out before we get started on the video. So the first thing I want to do is go through, and I'm just going to cut my pieces of paper. I want to have, I guess, let me see how big these are, 4 1/4. So I want to have 2 by 2 or 2 by 3. Trying to think here. No, I want to do squares. So I want to have 2 by 2 squares. So I'm just going to start cutting randomly. And let's see. So we're at 4 1/4. So 3 1/4 is 1. 2 1/4 is 2. So I'm just literally going to cut. I like that. That's a little more interesting. So that's why I turned this around. So you're looking for interesting bits in your work. Okay. I'm just going to lower the light just a little so we can see tiny bits of what I'm working on. There we go. So that you can see some of the bits and pieces in your work. Now, this doesn't have to be your perfect work. This can be your work that was left over when you used all the really good bits for other things. So don't worry about that. Let's see. So we're just literally going to go through and cut these things up. I'm going to cut this in half, 2 1/4, 2 1/8, because there's some interesting things going on both sides, but there's a little more gray on one side than the other, so I'm adjusting how I trim it. And you know, this piece is a nice piece, so I'm going to keep that. Whoop. This does not go in the garbage. That gets kept for later. And this piece, that one was more interesting. And this one, what do I want to take off? I'm going to take off a little bit of that gray. Nope. I'm going to take off a little bit of the white here and leave the red and gray on that side. There we go. So I'm just going through and deciding how I want to cut my squares. So I'm going to do a whole whack of them, and I shall return. But just to point out here, as I've been cutting, I realized that there is a better way to cut. So my original cutting, I was cutting down this way, but then it would delete what's going on the bottom. So the best way to cut is to cut your 2-inch squares first. 1, 2, and then you end up with something interesting on the bottom. Now, I'm not concerned that there's a lot of white on these guys because I am going to be doing another technique to them, so it doesn't worry me that these have very little on them, because the technique I'm going to use is going to be bringing out more of the color. There we go. So making sure that you do your 2 inches is 2 inches, 2 inch cuts first, and then that leaves you with this nice piece that you can use on another project. Otherwise, you end up with things that look, rather than nice like that, you've got things that are smaller and more awkward to use. Okay. Back to cutting. All right, so I have a whole bunch of them that I have done here, all cut up into 2 by 2 squares, and I had some unusual shapes. So and I did some weaving with this one. So I want to use these two as well. So what I'm just going to do is take my odd shape and I'm going to straighten out one side as best I can. Okay, and then I'm going to make a right angle on this side as best I can, using as much of the ink that's there as possible. And then I make my 4 inches wide, and then this actually gives me 6 inches wide, so I can put together 2 sets of 2 like this, and then cut it again. And I like to do, when I'm lining one on top of the other, I like to stick that together at the bottom so that they don't shift. If I can get them matching, there we go. So there's 2. There we go. So we have 6 out of that piece. And they all look similar, but like I said, we're going to be doing a different technique on top of them. Okay. Oh, and I wanted to do the woven one. Now, with woven pieces, you do have to remember that your edges are the only thing that's going to be glued down. So if you are going to use them for 2 by 2 squares, you're going to probably have to go back in and glue underneath some of the lips. So the first thing I'm going to do is just straighten up this edge and try to make it square as much as possible. Tuck that under there. There we go. And it's very heavy cardstock, so it's a little bit of a challenge to cut. There we go. And I'm just cutting off those loose edges because they're going to cause me problems. And I can already see what I'm going to do here. Whoops, I need to go a little bit further. This edge I don't need because it's 4.5 inches, so I'm going to, well, let's get all of this off first. That'll make it easier. So this is exactly 4 inches. Pretty much. Let me just scooch it in there. There we go, that's 4 inches. This one I'm going to take off the white that's there. Line it up. And that's 4 inches. So now I've got 2 sets of 2 by 2s. So, and I'm going to be careful. You know what? I'm going to cut it down here so the pressure is going to the bottom ridge, which should hold everything steady. There we go. And these are thick, so I can't stack them. I'm going to have to cut them one at a time. There we go. And be careful with them because they may come apart, like this one is coming apart already. So I'm going to glue that one together. Alright, so that's how I deal with oddly shaped things that aren't my perfect, you know, A4 or A2 card or 5x7 card, A7 card. So I'm just going to put these guys away because I have plenty more to work with. But I think I've got enough to at least do a demo for you. And I'm going to just glue these quickly and I will be right back. Okay, so the next step, I've got these guys all glued up so they'll stay together. The next step is to run these through in different patterns. So before I get my machine in the way, I'm going to divide them up. So there's a bunch of these guys, so I'm going to just spread them out. And I have a ton of different patterned and I'm just going to make sure that I don't get the same thing in any pile. That could probably go there. That could probably go there. Just spreading them up so that I don't end up with the same pattern on any particular, actually that can go there, that can go there, any particular color line. So these are all the papers that I've cut up. You can see they're all very different. The reason I am taking the time to separate them is because I'm going to run several through in my embossing folder at one time. So I want to make sure that they're kind of a mix for each pile, because each pile is going to be a different set of embossed images. Moving that along. I have way more than I need, which is awesome. So I'm just going to put these, and these guys I am probably not going to emboss because they're already double thick with the two pieces, one over the top of the other, but who knows? We might try it in the end. We can do 3D folders, so maybe we can do those as well. Okay. So I'm just going to do one run on most of my dies, or sorry, embossing folders, because I could load them up. So I'm going to start with a big one. This is the Spellbinders. This one is called Mandala Blooms. I always keep the packaging for these big guys because I store them slightly different. Now, the trick is to get as many. Now, let me make sure I've got the right surface. Yes. Yeah. Usually, where the text is, that's the upside. So, usually. So I'm going to now just lay my papers in there, as many as I can get on. I'm not even worried about, actually, let's do it this way. Not even worried about how they look. Oh, can I get you further in the screen? So I'm just putting as many as I can get on as possible. With this big one, I can get quite a few on. I don't want to go too close to the edge, so since it's not going equally across, I'm just going to give those guys a little more space. And that's all I can do. So this is going to get added to the next pile. And we're just going to run these guys through. Now this is a 3D embossing folder. So normally you would mist your paper, but this paper that I'm using is copy paper. Most of these patterns have been done on copy paper, so I'm not going to worry about misting. It's not a heavy cardstock. The other reason I'm not worried about it is because I don't mind if it does do a little bit of cracking, because this is all distressed stuff anyway, but I suspect that the paint will help prevent it from cracking. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Now I can never remember what my sandwich has to be. This is a 3D. Let's see. We might have to drop. No. Oh no. Okay, so we are going to put through on this 3D Spellbinders. I am going to use another top plate. Can I get it in? Nope, that's just a little too thick. So I'm going to try my thin die plate. Nope, you don't want to force it. So I'm going to start off with 2 shims. See how I do with that. Still too easy. So So I'm going to put in a third shim. You have to play around with it. No, that's still going to be too easy. All right, so let's figure this out. Don't want the magnetic platform, and I don't want my new plates. So it says on here, it doesn't say about 3D textured impressions. Well, it says textured impression goes through with 2 plates. So I got the bottom plate. Just feels a little too tight for me for the 3D. So let's see what happens. I'm going to try it. Make sure everything's lined up. No, that's way too much. So I'm going to go through with, oh, the other thing I have to remember, when you're doing these big guys, you need the extended plate, because you can't have it right up to the edge bulky, otherwise there's nowhere to roll. So let me pull out my extended plates. So that's part of the problem. And let's see what happens when we put the longer plates on. Oops, I'm going to have to readjust this slightly. There we go. Put that down there. And we got all kinds of plates here. I'm going to start with the B's, 2 B plates, and the platform. I'm going to put a little bit of the platform in, put this guy on there, and set him up again. Make sure those guys are okay. Alrighty. And let's see what happens now. No, that's still too much. Goodness gracious. So where is my, I'm going to try my thin die one. Oh, there we go, but that hasn't got enough pressure. So again, we are going to put on 1 shim and see if that makes enough pressure. 2 shims. I think 2 shims will do it. And then I'll repeat what my plate thing is here. Now this is with the Spellbinders texture 3D dies. Oh yeah, that's much better. That took some figuring out. Alright, because these dies are big, the first thing I did was get my extended platform and an extended B pad. Then I had my folder, and on top of my folder I put the thin die adapter and 2 shims, and that, let's see how that all worked out. Now when I go to the smaller sized embossing folders, I'm not going to worry about it as much. All right. Oh, awesome. They turned out great. And as I suspected, with the paint on it, it helped prevent it. But look at how pretty that is. So it's really, really done a great job. It didn't go through the paper, which could have happened, but look how much texture is on there. So I'm very pleased, very pleased. Look how embossed those are. This one cracked a little bit, just on that flower, but not too bad. Now the other thing I could have done is flipped the platform so that my top was on the bottom, turned all of these upside down on that, and then given them a little spray, closed it, and run it through. That would have been the other alternative to give them a little bit more ability to bend over the texture. But I like it. It worked out just fine. Now I gotta stay organized so I don't lose things. So these guys are all good to go. So that's one round, and we're gonna do another process to those afterwards. So I'll put those up there. Now I'm gonna take another folder. I'm gonna take a Vicky Bouton folder. Don't remember what this was from. I think this is from the last year or 2 years ago, the travel. So we are going to use our regular base. Okay, this is just a regular folder. It's not a 3D folder, so I'm going to use my base plate. There's all the big stuff. The big stuff is there. I am not going to use this, so we're not using our, what do you call it, our thin die. Plate, and I need a top plate. So this should work. We're gonna, again, the printed side, I'm assuming, is the upside. Let's open it up to make sure I am correct. Oh, these are tricky. Yes. So again, everything's going up on this one. See how many I can get in. 1, 2. These are the 3 from the last one. So I can get about 6 on here. That's why you need a lot of different patterns. Okay, now these will go on the top of the next pile. This, I don't care whether they flop or not. That's not an issue. And let's see how we do on this one. Leaving a bit of space for the plate to catch. There we go. You should only have to run it through once. Oop, it's all stuck. See what we have. Awesome, worked beautifully. You can see the texture on there. And we're going to do another technique on top to make it even more obvious. So the more patterny the pattern is, the less you see the texture. This is why we're doing a second run of something else on top. So that's that. Now the next one we're going to do is an old cuttle bug, so I can't get as many of that in there. So just putting them side by side, very tightly packed. I can only get 4 in this one. Thank goodness for bigger sized die cutting machines. Alrighty. Now if I really wanted to push it, I could probably double up the papers. Actually, let's try that, and then maybe I can get 8 out of here. So I'm pushing the package a little, but that's what experimenting is all about. And they don't have to be perfect because we're not seeing the whole image of the of what we're embossing anyway, so it's all good. Just going to make sure everything gets in there, even if we have to cross them over just a little bit. Alrighty, so now we're trying for 8 on this, and we'll see how it goes, if it can handle it. Alright. Now, I probably need to have one. I should have put maybe 1 spacer in there because these embossing folders are not quite the same. Look at that, they're all stuck together. God, I was able to do it. Look at that. So I was able to get 2 pieces embossed at the same time on these because of the thinner paper. I don't know that I would do this with thicker paper, but that at least allows us to get more out of these little mini folders. Oh, I got another one of those, because you know, before you get your big die cut machine, you have your little one. And I'm going to double up again. So there's 1, 2, and I don't really care how they lay out. 3, 4, just make sure they're inside the area that needs 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we're getting really messy. Now these guys I'm going to put over here for the next pile. And I don't even need to have that because the other Cuttlebug went through fine. And I can hear it making some cracking, and I'm going back and forth with it, so I think we're going to be okay. Oh yeah, this is so much fun. All right, these are all almost fused together, but they peel off, and look at that texture. Whoops, my focus is off. Look at that texture. So they're all very textury, so that works really well, doing 2 at a time with this thin paper. Like I said, I can't see it happening well with thicker paper though. But these guys are all good to go. Awesome. Happy with that. Okay. And so I'm just building up a whole whack of different ones. Let's try a 3D Tim Holtz one. See if we have anything we have to do with that. This one is called Arched, and it's a 3D. So the intention is you put your paper down there. I am not going to wet it. I'm going to hope for the best. And I'm going to see how many I can actually get in there. The thing about the Tim Holtz ones is they go completely across the plastic. So as long as you're in the plastic, you won't get an edge. Whereas I found the spellbinders, you get an edge. On some of them, not all of them. And can we squeeze 2 more? So this is how I get away with working with copy paper. Like I reuse things that I've printed on and no longer need. I don't throw that paper out. I use it for tests and running my roller off on, and then I cut it up and I make it into these kinds of projects. So what do I want to do here? I'm going to go to the thin and see if that's going to work. No, it's still too heavy. Alrighty. So I'm going to take this bottom plate. Oh, and I lost everything. So I'm going to take the bottom plate and put it on top. There we go. See if that will work. Oh, yeah. There you go. So as long as you have a little bit of lead, whoops, I don't need to go back. As long as you have a little bit of a lead space, you can get it through with just the one. And you don't want to go back and forth because it will crack. Now this has cracked, so I think with the Tim Holtz 3D ones, when it says 3D, it doesn't mean they're exactly the same. Tim Holtz 3D works different than Spellbinders 3D. So with the Tim Holtz, I'm going to have to use a bit of water. So that just simply means that on my next Tim Holtz one, instead of putting my paper there and having the print on the upside, I'm going to flip it and put my paper down, face down, and spray just a little bit of water so that it can pull through better. And we'll see how that works because we'll do another one. So that was fun. Oh, I should have shown you. That has a great texture to it as well. This is the arched. All right, now, what did I put? Okay. And I'm going to do another Tim Holtz. This one is going to be called, what is it, numbered? And I have a system of organizing all these where I use a product called Evernote, and how I know something has been entered into Evernote is I just stick a little blue on the packaging, because sometimes I get behind in my library. All right, so that's the printed side. That side's going down. Yeah, sometimes I get behind in my doing my job and keeping up on my what's in my inventory. So at least when that happens, I can. So this one we're going to try wetting the back just ever so slightly to try to avoid getting the cracks. And again, I use everything that's a paper bag from work. All right, so I need to moisten this, but I don't want to make it too wet. Whoa, as soon as I do it, it curls up. That's not what I want. Whoops, got two of them there. This one is dry. This one is wet. So this is going to be a little bit tricky. Not too tricky. There we go. Only a minor incident. And let's run that through. Now that one was called, I don't know if I said, this one was called Numbered. And as I've said, the 3D ones you don't go through twice. You can on the regular ones. Oh, look how beautiful that is. Yep, no cracking. So that's the way to avoid that cracking. Look at that beautiful number 8. Whoa, this is crazy. So with the Tim Holtz ones, you're going to need to have that little bit of moisture. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just in love. All right, and that has a bag. I can get rid of the bags. I don't need plastic. What else do I have here? I have a small 3D folder from Sizzix. Let's see how that one does. We've got the sandwich. We know we have the bottom block and then the bottom plate we're using. Now I'm not going to spray, because I'm going to see how that all works and see if we have to spray. So making sure that our print is on the upper side, and then we're just going to line up these guys. And this is a 3D one we're working with. Okay. And run that through. Little bit of lead all the way through, only once, because it's 3D. You don't want to crush your paper. Oh, that did really well, but we didn't have to wet it. Isn't that great? So we have our texture on there. Cool. This one had a streak of white. That isn't the paper cracking. So Tim Holtz is much deeper with their 3D. So you need the water with the Tim Holtz for sure. FYI. That's kind of cool. You can see it on the back too. It looks really neat on the back. Okay, that one's done. So I'm going to finish off my piles here, so I have lots of options. Oh, I should show you one other one, which is the little tiny minis. This one's called Mini Botanical. Oh, that last one, I should tell you what that was. That last one was Doily from Sizzix. And this one is Mini Botanicals. It's a 3D, but it's a mini. So I'm going to try to get 2 in here. You can see that I paint and use all kinds of different mediums inside my stuff. This is a Tim Holtz, but it's small, so I'm not sure. I'm going to try another way. I'm going to double up and see if that prevents some of the, whoops, I want it this way, some of the cracking. So that might be another way we could do that. All right. I'm going to get 4 there. It'll be the same sandwich, same materials. And let's see if we could avoid that. Now, it won't be as 3D because there's 2 pieces of paper, but that looks pretty good, but it is cracking. So, gotta do it. All right. But I love the texture, looks great. We were able to put 2 through, and both of them got embossed fine, but there is cracking. All right, so now I'm going to try another way. So I'm turning it upside down so my top now is on the bottom. I'm going to double up, but I'm going to spray each time very lightly so that there's water on all 4 papers. There's 1. Now you don't want to do this if you're using reactive inks, obviously, unless you've sealed your reactive inks. But these are all acrylic paints, so I'm not worried about them. All right, get in there. Whoops. So that's there, that's there, that's there, that's there. Let's see if we can do 4 this way. All right. With no cracking. Let's hope. Let's see the front surfaces. Okay. Ooh. They do stick. Oh no, they're still cracking. Ah, that little piece there. Yeah, that went through. So I'm thinking, what am I thinking? I think singles, and I'll try 1 round of singles to make sure I'm absolutely right about that on these little guys. Yeah, putting 2 together is not really helping. But you are getting the texture, so that's kind of cool. So I'm just going to put 2 singles. We do have to put it face down because they do need to have a bit of moisture, like their larger counterpart. So let me just, going to hold it. A little bit of water. There we go. And run it through. Okay, so 3D does not like double layers of things. It forces them to stick together, but no cracking on these ones. Beautiful. Now you see white there, but that's the white that was left over from how the ink or the paint went onto my plate. Yeah, there's no cracking. So as long as you do the wetting on the back of your stuff, you're good to go. You can double up on a plain embossing folder, but you can't double up on a 3D folder. Sorry about that, folks. So those will take a little more time. All right, I'm going to finish off, and I will see you shortly. Okay, so I have got everything done. Now, I just want to share a couple of things. I think when I was talking about this particular folder, the one that was called Doily, I might have said it was a Spellbinders, but it's actually a Sizzix 3D. So again, it has a different set of characteristics than the Tim Holtz do. And I ran this through. Remember, I was telling you the double-sided, double thick because of the, what do you call it? The weaving. I ran it through the weave folder that I had. I don't recommend it. It did go through. It did do its thing. I did soak it fairly well to get it to go through, so you can see the pattern that is on it, on top of the actual quilt look. Um, but it's really hard on the machine. So it was very difficult to pull it through, and I think if you did that too many times, you would wreck your actual machine. So I don't recommend double thick going through. I think 80 pounds, maybe 100, but only on, really 80 pounds would be the farthest I would go for embossing intricate 3D patterns. So the other thing that occurred is that one of my dies was so sharp that it cut. And I don't mind that it cut, but it, you know, things are falling out. So I'm going to repair this. I kept all the pieces, and I'm just going to literally tape across the back to repair this because I do like the look. It's kind of an interesting interesting change in it, and I don't even know that I'll do um, a second technique on this, but we'll see. So anyway, I will be fixing those before I put them in the project. All right, so now our next step is to augment these. Now there's a bunch of things you can do for augmenting. There are things like waxes. You can do waxes in augmenting, and you know, I have many different kinds of waxes from different companies. The other thing you can do is highlighting, and I just happen to have a whole series of these interesting paints from South After, a company called Isink. And what else can I do? I can put paste. So I have all kinds of pastes. Now, I want clear because I want the color to come through, or translucent. So I'm going to use Sparkle, and I'm going to use Snowflake, and I'm going to use, what else? Sparkle, Snowflake, transparent gloss. I don't even know if that still has anything in it. Let's check. Oh, I haven't even opened that one. Look at that. Transparent gloss. So, you know, anything that you can think of. The other thing you might want to use is some gloss varnish. I like to varnish everything shiny, so it all goes shiny afterwards. What else? You can use Sparks, or TCW stencil butter, anything that you can use your finger on, whoops, to rub something over a textured surface. So let's start playing, and just I'll show you what I mean by that. All right, so I have this interesting sort of bland looking color, sort of a mustardy yellowy color, and I'm just going to go over the surface of that with, I have a luster wax from Sizzix, and it is called nothing. Oh, there it is. Nope, doesn't tell me. Lilac Rainbow. So this is a little bit older. I've had it for a while, but because it's wax, it doesn't really go bad as long as you keep the lid on it. You may have to move it around a little bit to get it to rework itself, but it lasts forever, and literally that's all you need on your finger. You don't want it to be too thick, because if it's too thick it will clump, and you're just going to rub it over the surface. So literally I'm just tapping in, getting off if I have too much, and I've got thicker in some areas, thinner in some areas, but I'm trying not to push it into the flat paper behind the texture. So And I'll bring that up to the camera so you can see it a little better. Maybe I'll turn this camera off so you can see it a little better. But it has, oh, there we go, an iridescent shine to it. So that's kind of a fun thing to use, those luster paints and things. And you just go over it until you get it all off your finger. And I may want to add something to this. I don't know. Now I have a big smush that kind of went right onto the background paper. So you do see a highlight there, but it just takes practice to be able to put it on smoothly. And clean your finger well before you go to the next thing. So the let's take a different texture. So this one, this one is kind of cool. It's got some gold in there already that you can see kind of shining. I'm going to add some of this purple, what is this called? It's called Orchid Stencil Butter from TCW. And I'm throwing out lots of names. And again, I'm just barely coating. And I want to just hit the tops of those circles as much as possible. Might need a little more. I'm going to dab it off there so that, oh, there we go. You don't want to make too much of a highlight. You just want it to hit the surface of those circles. It will go down inside a little bit, but you want to pull up those circles. Get just a little more. There we go. And so I'm still keeping that base color that's underneath there, and I'm just adding until I'm happy with it to the actual embossing. All right. So that's a much more dynamic piece than it was when it was just embossed. So I'm highlighting the embossing on it to add. And what I did here is a little bit of color theory in order to make it pop. Orange is sort of on the opposite side of the color wheel for purple. So purple is a cool color and orange is a hot color. So that helps to make things pop. So I'm going to wipe off my finger again. It's good to have some paper towels handy and some wipes for your fingers. There we go. And just take some of that off. And you can see I'm building my next couple of colors. This one, just off the top, is all inks. And I am going to soak this one on top of a piece of paper. But it's sitting there until I have time to do it. So if you see that fall in, that's what that's all about. Okay, so I've done this. And I've done that. All right, so now let's play with these guys a little bit. I want to put some snowfall paste. And again, I'm just using my finger. Make sure your finger is clean before you go dipping it in. If it's not clean, then grab a spatula. And I'm just putting some here. And I'm literally just playing it over the top. Now, you won't see much of a difference on the camera because the snowfall isn't like glittery. It doesn't have glitter, but what it does have is crystals. And the crystals will catch the light. And I'm just going to try to make sure I get it all over the surface. Using it all up. There we go. And again, getting that off your surface before you put your next thing on. So I'm going through these fairly quickly just to give you an idea, and you'll see them all at the end. So here is, see how it's got sort of crystal effects? It's not glitter. It's clear to the eye until it catches the light. So that's snowfall paste. Let's pick something else out here. Okay, so this is fairly wild background with a really kind of interesting texture on it. I am going to put some sparkle paste on that. And again, I'm going to try to keep it on the top surface. This is a little bit wetter, so you're going to have to be careful and really dab off. And just try to keep that glitter on the top surface as much as you can. It's almost like it needs to be just a little bit drier. And this is another one of those ones where you won't really see it until the light hits it. And it's got little minute, I don't know if I can show you the little minute glitter in it. It's hard to see. But it is there, and it shows up better when it's all dry, and it will catch the light. And instead of just being like a white, it's a silvery glitter. Okay, and you're just catching the surface of all of those crevices. All right, and let's see. I will use these over and over again, but I'm just going through as many things as I can think of. Now this is, again, a luster wax from Sizzix, and it is, oh, I should have mentioned these are Distress Grit Paste Snowfall and Distressed Texture Paste Sparkle from Ranger. And I'm going to put some silver, and this wax is the same as the other wax. You just don't want to have too much on your finger at one time. And I'm just going to rub that over the pattern. If it gets on the base, don't worry about it too much. Just try your best to just hit the surface. And the less you have on your finger, the better for doing that. And then that's what that looks like. It looks almost like metal now. So we've got silver on that one. And got a little too much silver out. Wax is great because you can put as much back as you want, as long as you haven't contaminated it with something else. And it does clean up, but you need to have a little bit of alcohol or something to really clean it well. But we can get it clean to the point where it's not going to get on things by just rubbing it with a baby wipe. For now. When I clean my desktop, I'll do a better job. Okay, so that's silver. And now I have transparent gloss. So this will go on something that, let's see, what do we have in here? We have, oh, I should have, I'm thinking about something, thinking about patinaing something. Get a little bit of green here. So I think these two colors I'll put together. And a little tiny bit of blue paint. Okay, so this one I'm just going to leave for this little thing that came into my brain. Although, do I already have it? Oh yes, I'll use that instead. So you can use paint to do any of these techniques as well. I'm going to be playing with this set of stuff. What's this one? Stained wood. Okay, that'll be something else. So this is going to be here. Actually, this is going to be here. Right. Okay. Back to clear. So I am going to rub some, so you can see the texture on here. And watch what happens when I rub some clear on it. Now this clear is normally a little more watery than it appears to be, but I've had it for quite a while. So it may not be as happy. Yeah, it's a bit jelly-like, but that's okay. I can use it actually much better this way. And I'm just going to rub it over top of the surface of the weave. And you'll see a totally different experience. So I'm just getting it on the top surfaces of the weave. And it's transparent and it's gloss, so it's not going to add any color or change the color at all, but it is going to make a difference to the look. See now where it was dull before, it is now, can I find another one of those so I can give you an example of dullness? Yeah, so where it was dull before, it's now shiny on the surface of that weave. All right, so I've got a couple of minutes. I'm going to be taking a break for dinner, but you don't have to take a break because you're on video. And I am just going to quickly do a rust thing with this. Now this just spoke to me. So I'm not going to use these guys at the moment. I am going to use my water-based patina. And it's kind of like a paint. Well, it is a paint, really. And I'm going to mix rust and green to get a kind of patina look on our patina look on our nuts and bolts here. And again, I'm just rubbing over the surface. The 3D is much easier to get a surface cover on than the lower profile embossing folders, but you know what? Play around with them. They still look great. There we go. And I'm just highlighting. You can probably see things coming up. Should probably get a little higher in the screen. There we go. Things popping up. So that plain blue now has got some rusty brown on it. And I'm just going over the larger pieces of rusty brown that I can catch. There we go. So this is with the brown on it. Look at how different that is. Like that was very mute before. I can't find. Somewhere in there I have more of these. But the pattern really shows up. There you go. So that's the pattern before, and that's the pattern after bringing it out with some paint. I'm going to take my finger or my wet wipe and just wipe that off so I don't get any of that anywhere I don't want it. And now I'm just going to go in and tap the patina. And I don't really want it to cover up the paint too much, but I want to give it like that rusty, turning greeny looking color. And I'm not using a lot. I'm using a very little for that. Wipe that down and just rub over this a little bit more. And so now you can sort of, well, the coloring is not coming through, but you can sort of see a patina on all of that brown. Some of it is still quite brown, and other places you've got a little bit of patina. But that is so totally different than how it looked before. So I love these paints. They're great for doing that kind of a technique. What else can I do quickly? This is wax. It's a stained wood wax. I didn't do any wood, but I think I'm going to try it just a tiny little bit on this guy here. Now, when I did this sample, I was playing around with ideas in color blending, and I didn't really like it because the color itself wasn't my favorite. But now that I've been cutting it up and using it in this way, I kind of don't mind it. So let me just get this on. I might have to do a second layer of another color to pull it out. So this has kind of muddied the whole thing down a little bit. The nice thing about wax is you can keep rubbing it until it dries completely, and then you have like a different look. So let me just pull one of these guys for you to see. So what I've done is I've just grunged it up a little bit more. And now I could actually add a little bit of gold. I might have gold here. This is copper. Copper might be okay. This is copper metallic paint. So I'm just going to take a tiny little bit. Oh, it might be too dark. And just brush that on randomly. That's all right. It's not too dark. It's leaving kind of a neat texture where it hits. Tiny bit more. Whoops. That's a tiny bit, a lot more. Okay, so now that's bringing out the texture of that weave much more than on this piece. So that is done with acrylic paint. That is a copper color, but you could do that also with gold. All right, I'm gonna just clean up a little bit. I'll be right back. Okay, so I haven't quite finished up everything. So I have all of these guys done in some form. Not really too impressed with that one. It's kind of plain. This one, I need to do a little more. This one, I need to do something. So most of the things are done, and I just have a couple more to do. So I'm going to do a few things. This one is crackle paste. I'm waiting for this one to dry. That's going to look very cool. And I've done all kinds of things. I've used the eyes ink, filled in the flowers on this one, and then I used some white paint to highlight the edges because they were cracking anyway. I think you've seen most of this. This one I just added gold paint to the edges of the, can't really see it on the camera, gold paint to the edges of the burlappy look. This one has glitter paste, which is another product. Gold, no, this is champagne paint. This is champagne paint. I think I need some silver something in here. This one is a piece of white, but I'm afraid to touch it because it's so pretty just the way it is. Look how pretty that is. Whoop. But I realize I've got to do something. And this. So I've tried to limit and have only one of everything on here, but I think there might be two of some things. Now, I want to dig into some textury things. So I used the crackle paste on that one. So I'm going to use some bead texture. I think I'm going to do it on this one because it has a nice big flat surface to work with. And I'm just literally splopping stuff out. This is a cool texture paste because it has little beads in it. And the trick is to get them to stay on. You have to kind of build up a layer. I'm going to lose a little bit of the detail of the circles. And the beads don't want to come off my finger, so that's a bit problematic. There we go. Force them off. Oh, there we go. And now just going to drop those beads back on the surface. Some things work a little better than other things. Again, getting those beads back on the surface. Not as successful as I'd hoped, but I'm going to leave what's there, and I'm going to add something else because it does need more than just that. So we're going to leave that to dry, and then I'm going to add a little more to that. So it's just literally playing around with all your stuff. And I've got glitter everywhere. Oh, where did that go? I hope I didn't throw that in the pile here and it's all stuck together. It probably is. Oy, oy, oy. I did one. Oh no. Yeah, it is stuck on everything. Oh well. I did one with some why can't I think of the name of this? It's glitter, it's stickles. And half of it came off just now because it stuck to something because I threw all these guys in a pile. So I have to be careful. All right, so now that was beads. Beads didn't work out too well. Crackle worked out great. I'm loving the crackle. It hasn't dried yet. I have flaky texture. I don't know which one I can use the flaky texture for. Let's put a little bit out, not too much, because it is flaky. Actually, maybe I'll go back over this with some of the flaky on the pieces that are, there we go, the pieces that are left over. Gonna have to add a little bit of something here for sure. Maybe a bit of color. To jazz that up just a little bit. So the flaky texture is much more satisfying. Let me turn this light down so you can see the flaky texture there. It is literally flakes of stuff, which is very cool. Okay, but I need the light to see what I'm doing. So that goes there. And I have a sandy texture, which I really want to try. That's beads. Crackle. Crackle. I've got two crackle. How did I end up with two crackle? Flaky. But I don't have a sandy texture. I have some pearly textures. I got some silver here. Oh, I think I might want to do blue on the flower. So I'm just taking you through a few things here. Not a huge amount. Don't need a huge amount. So this is my rose. Oh, look at how pretty that is. I don't know if you can see it coming up or not. And just tap it to give it some texture. So there's my rose. That's looking cool. Wipe off my finger. My finger is multicolored at this point and multi-textured. My mat is suffering a little. All right. This one could use some of something. I can't tell what that is. I think I already have one of those. Okay, so this one I'm loving. What do I want to add to that? What color do I want to add to this to really pop it? I think I'll do some blue. And this is a different kind of product. This is like a paint product. Ooh, look at that color. I don't know how it'll go on, so before I jump in too deep, whoa, it's bringing up the pattern. I might have to do a few layers. Some of these things are a little bit thin, so they need to be done in multiple layers. So we're starting to see that pattern come through all in those areas. So just adding more in those areas. So it has Super 3D, and then it has sections where it's just regular embossed. Look at that. Of course, this doesn't give you any real concept of how it looks, but the color is like a marine color. It's beautiful. Let's get that off of there. And we'll be done shortly so that we can put this all together on a tile. Now, I do not have this one, do I? I don't think I have this one, so we're going to do that one. And I do have that one, and I do have that one, so we'll probably do this rose. All right, we're going to do, ooh, that would have been a disaster. We're going to do, that was pearly blue. I'm actually just going to do a little bit of finger painting. It's not, I've been doing it all night, but I can't get these things open. There we go. Takes a little bit of energy. There, ooh, look at how silky that is. Okay. Now I don't use a paintbrush because I find I don't want it to be like a real thing. So I'm just going in with my pinky on this one, and I'm just coloring that rose. And then I think I have some green somewhere. I don't worry about wasting paint because I use my tissues for other projects, so I'm quite happy. I'd rather have more to play with than less. All right, that's that one. And I know I have a green somewhere. So we're gonna go back to this acrylic paint. This one hasn't even been opened yet. Whoa, look at that. This is shimmery goodness. Okay, just tapping on my fingertip. Look at how cute that is. Whoops, focus. Isn't that fun? That is fun. Okay, that's all of them. I'm gonna give them a quick dry and I will be right back. Okay, so I've dried everything as best I can. The thing that's going to take time is this one, so I just have to be careful when I'm planning. Now, I have done some moving around of things, and so my thinking in moving around of things was to spread the black ones out from each other to make sure I don't have a similar color. Like, what was it? This was silver and that was silver, so I split those up. Trying to make sure my darker images that appeared overall darker were on the outside, and trying to keep super pale things, like I had those two side by side, but they kind of were muted, so I tried to make sure pale things were near unpale, non-pale things or brighter things. So this is kind of the direction I'm going. The next step is, I know that these are 2 inches each, so 2, 4, 6, 8, 2, 4, 6, 8. So I need a piece of cardstock that is 8 by 8. So I have a piece of Vicki Boutin mixed media paper. I'm cutting off a screen because I don't want to move what I've got there. So just give me one quick moment to get that 8 by 8 piece of cardstock. Now, just to mention, our pieces were cut at 8 by 8, but with embossing, it does shorten the paper slightly. So it is possible that we will have to trim our 8 by 8 down, which is fine. So there's my 8 by 8 paper. Now, the next step, if these papers were heavier, I might want to glue everything down. But because they're very lightweight, I'm going to use my large double-sided tape, and I am going to move a few things around so I can actually put the tape on one side of the cardboard, on one side of the paper, and I want to line it up with the edge because we don't want anything to pull up from the edge. Whoop. So this just takes a little finessing because you want to have a nice clean edge, but at the same time you don't want your stuff to stick to your counter. I probably should move everything just a little bit. That one's a tricky one. Everything else is dry, but that one takes time. There we go, that's a little better. So now I'm just going to line this up with my last row of tape. And if you remember my fingers, look how clean my hands came. So this stuff, if you have the right cleaning product for your hand, comes off super easy. So that I don't make myself crazy, I'm just going to make sure I have it all flattened out. And I'm going to do a row at a time. So I just have to find where I can pull off the easiest. There we go. I'm going to start up at the top. I could play around with direction. Other than the roses, which really do have a direction, everything else is pretty much, like this has a direction as well. Everything else is pretty much, I liked it the way it was there, pretty much the way I want to see it. So now I'm going to go in. This guy, I actually put some pre-existing tape on because I needed to use my mini archival ink pad. Whoops. Yeah. It's a good thing I did that. It's giving me a little bit of oh no. Sorry. Let's try that again. I want it right in that corner. And right along, I'm sticking the top edge there and the side edge there. So as long as I butt everything up against each other, I can always trim anything that's left over. So this one is going to go right beside and right across the top. There we go. And then this one is going to go right beside. Now, let's get the next row of adhesive off, if you can find a spot to pull it. And you don't want to, there we go. Alrighty, now, I think I'll have to leave this the way it is. So now I'm going to butt this right up against the top one along the side. And this one is significantly different in size, but I am going to finish the squares with a marker, so it will be hidden. All right, now there's our panel. So there's going to be a couple of things that we're going to do. We are going to use our thick black marker, and I'm going to use a paint marker on this one because I have more options of thickness of head. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the one I want. Okay, this one is a Posca PC5M black. And now I'm going to go and make the finishing edges to this. So I need a marker, or not a marker, but a ruler or straight edge. I want to make sure that my edge is nice and smooth. And I know that my pen is thick, so I'm going to give myself about a 1/16 of an inch. And I'm just going to go very slowly down in between each tile. And then go back the other way. All right, so we have our delineation. Now I'm going to avoid that because, and I should actually let that dry, because it's still wet. So I'm going to go on either side of it without going over top of it. And while I'm thinking of it, every time I draw a line, I need to wipe off the edge of my ruler, because otherwise, and I should hit this paint with a little bit of heat just to make sure it's completely dry. There we go. And now I can go back and do this one. It's not going to be exactly perfect because everything is dimensional. There we go. And there's our second line. Okay, turn this around, and I'm noticing there's just a bit of a spot there, so I can go back in and touch that up. So we do have some areas that need to be helped along, where they're a little bit crunchy. And I've got a gap here, so I'm going to use a smaller head pen, same material, just smaller. And this one is, so this one is a Posca 3M, and I'm just going to bend back. Oh, I need to go even smaller. And this is a 1, and hopefully, yes, that fills nicely. So I'm just going in, and where there was gaps in the paper that were showing up white, I'm using my finer marker, my 1, to go in there and cover up those white spots. Now, if I left all that acrylic on there till the end of the project, when I was finished doing all my lines, I would have a real mess to clean up. It wouldn't clean very nicely because the paint would have been drying for too long. Okay, so there's our tiles. Now I want to frame the outside. So I'm going to do that in exactly the same way. I won't need my little pen anymore, so I can get rid of that. Let's just hit this with a tiny bit of heat to make sure we've got everything more or less dry. And now I'm going to put a piece of paper under here because I might go over the lines. So we're just going to finish off the edge here. And I have a couple of areas where the ink has slipped through, so I'm just going to go in and correct them as best I can without making a bigger mess with a wet wipe. All right, so there is our finished work. One final step, if you choose to do it, and it's completely up to you, but I like to have, I'm just noticing there's some open spots here. Didn't get right to the edge. Okay, So I like to put a gloss finish on it so it really does look like tiles. But what you could do is decide on each of them which you would like to have a gloss finish or not. Now I use Duraclear gloss varnish, and I literally paint it on with my old handy dandy crappy brush, and I just splay it all over the top. And just move it around, cover everything with a coat. And this gives it a nice glossy finish. Oh, except where it becomes paint. That's not good. Should have let that dry a little bit longer. So let me just pull that out. Oh my goodness. Sorry, folks. I'm going to stop there because I'm just afraid that I'm going to pull more ink in, but I just want to make sure where I have it, I've got an even coat. And this just nicely seals everything in. It still shows all of the detail of all of the techniques that you used, because it's three-dimensional and you can't get rid of that even if you tried. Where's my spray? So I'm just spraying my brush to make sure it doesn't dry out before I'm ready. And I'll just lift that up for you to see. And see how nicely that kind of gives you a shine, and it will stiffen your board too. Now, you have a couple of options. You can just hang it as is by putting a command strip on the back of it, or you can frame it. There's a number of different ways to frame. I think I've done some frames on my Use Your Scrap channel. The other thing is there are dies that will cut frames. So this is a frame that was cut from a die, and as you can see, you could use that kind of a frame over top of your work as well. I wouldn't suggest red necessarily, but so this is going to dry and it's going to be all shiny. And that, my friends, is the end of our demo for today. I just want to make sure I don't stick. And there is using your scrap art pieces, some double-sided tape, your embossing folders, your mediums. So you've done a whole whack of using up of your leftover stuff. And these are beautiful. I mean, I have a whole bunch more, so I can make lots of them, and I'm excited because I know that I have friends that would appreciate these little works of art. So, having said that, please share with your friends if you like today's work, and I will see you next Thursday. And don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel at the end of the video. Bye!